Welcome, fans, once again to That Was Two with professional independent referee Brad Livingston. With me today, a veteran of the independent scene in the western part of Canada, all over the place, Scotty Mac. Scotty, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Super excited. Can't wait. So the first question I always ask everybody is, were you a fan of the wrestling business growing up?
Yeah, I've watched wrestling as long as I can remember. The first big events I saw were just like were VHS of WrestleMania 2 was the first pay-per-view I remember watching. But yeah, in Canada here, it was on VHS several months later. We didn't get our pay-per-view capabilities until much later. Yeah. But yeah, from about WrestleMania 2 on, and it's just it was an obsession. When I was 15, my mom sat down and had to talk with me, and she told me that, you know, this wrestling thing, it's getting to be a bit much, and that she thinks that I need to cut back on. No, she wanted me to stop watching it for a while, and that was the first time I ever said no to my mom.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been an obsession, and I'm still a fan. I enjoy watching WWE on television, and I love watching our own product at ECCW.
So when was it that you decided that you wanted to do?
Again, it's like ever since I can remember. I think I wrote a list when I was a little boy, sort of, you know, I think the jobs that I wanted to do, and it was actor and writer were the other two, and I've managed to pull off all three in a sense, because it's been my partner Jeff and I that have been writing, so to speak, most of the ECCW shows for over 10 years now. So it's cool that you know, I got to achieve. I'm 3 for 3 as far as the jobs that I wanted to do when I was a little kid.
That's awesome. So when was it that you decided to get your training, and where did you go?
When I finished high school, I guess I didn't feel ready, in the sense that I knew when I was going to be pursuing wrestling that it was going to be all about wrestling, and I matured late. I was really like a big kid up until recently. And but yeah, it was after high school, and a buddy got a job in radio up in northern Alberta, and so I went with him because, like I said, I wasn't ready to start wrestling yet. And then it was spending a year of just kind of growing up and whatever, and I ended up in Edmonton and started training with a group called Can-Am Wrestling.
Yes.
A guy called Steve Gillespie.
Yep.
So yeah, I got my initial start with them, and then it was shortly after that I moved back to BC, and I started training with the ECCW.
Did you work any matches for Can-Am? Because I lived in Calgary right around that time. I lived in Calgary 99, 2000, 2001, and I remember going to a couple of Can-Am shows that Steve was running, and I would have found that out obviously through going to Stampede Wrestling shows, but I found out that Steve was running, and so I caught that.
Yeah, I didn't get to work any matches. I didn't get that far when I was there. I moved back to BC before I was anywhere close to my first match. Yeah, so it was they would put on shows at the Cook County Saloon in Edmonton, and I that's just where I took my first bumps, really, and then it was back to BC.
So who was your trainer in BC, and can you talk a little bit about leading into your first match?
Chance Beckett, I would give the top spot to as far as my training. He's really one of the most talented guys that I've ever been in the ring with. And then Michelle Starr, Juggernaut. There was others, but I'd say those were the three initially that really got me going, and it was super cool because they saw something in me right away, and so I ended up with really great opportunities right away. I I had been training for, must have been about 6 months. And I was booked on Boxing Day against Chance Beckett, my trainer, who, like I said, arguably was the best wrestler in the company at the time. So my first match got to be against, one of the best. And I broke my arm 6 weeks before that training, trying to do a springboard drop kick, and the guy was too close, and I broke my wrist. And then 6 weeks later, I had the match against Chance, and it was 2 days after I got my cast off. But I wasn't going to miss that opportunity. And then from there, ECCW just kept giving me the best that they had. Like time after time, it was, I think after that was Adam Firestorm, and then Disco Fury, and then I'm in there with Christopher Daniels, and who we're bringing back on Saturday for the first time in quite a long time. ECCW is going to have the Fallen Angel Christopher Daniels against Ravenous Randy on Saturday at the Hard Rock. So tickets are still on sale for that at Ticketmaster. It's our 22nd anniversary show, and it's really cool for me because I started with ECCW, and then and obviously now I own it. But I take a lot of pride in the ECCW, and I'm ECCW through and through.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I lived in Calgary, and obviously I went to the Stampede shows, and I was doing my ed degree out there. So during my student teaching, Bruce Hart was a supply teacher at that point. So I got to meet him and stuff, and through that I heard about ECCW, and so I started checking it out. And one of the guys that really drew me in was yourself. You were definitely the top one that drew me in. But there was also kind of a Canadian legend, and you worked him quite a few times early on. I want to talk about that a little bit. Len Olson, or Lenny St. Clair, a.k.a. Dr. Luther.
Yeah, man. Luther's a guy, he's since become a friend, and I have all the respect in the world for him. And ever since the beginning, he was just one of those guys that, when he walked in a room, you knew it, and he has a charisma and a there's something about him, and you know that right away when you meet him. So with his character, he's very nice. He's very he's a good dude in person. He's a cool guy. But his character's freaky, and he also knows it doesn't take much to fuck around with a greenhorn, with a rookie, and especially one that has as much respect for the guys that came before him as I do. Anyone that's been able to lace up the boots and have any sort of success in the ring, my hat's off to them. But Luther, like you said, he's a legend, and he was intimidating, and I never knew if he was fucking with me or if he actually liked me. And the first time we ever wrestled, it was sudden. It was my first shot at the ECCW title, and initially I was booked to work against I think just another guy, like a guy on the mid card, and they switched the card because someone couldn't come, and all of a sudden I have a title shot against Dr. Luther. And so it's exciting, obviously, but I'm standing in the ring, and I'm with Chance Beck and Rockford. They're my big brother and his best friend. We're a little faction, and Luther and Juggernaut are coming out to the ring, and I'm standing there, and the spot had Beckett and Rockford basically going, "You're on your own for this one," and taking off, and they did that. And I'm looking at Jug and Luther approach the ring, and I'm legitimately scared. Like it's a work, but I'm looking at them come towards me. Like, it was real easy for me to show the emotion on my face. And the match seemed to be going pretty well, except for I remembered my spots and kept fucking up his. So I would get my shit in, but anytime he's supposed to hit something, I'm like ducking it, and and that's definitely not what you want to do, especially with a vet. And we got to the back, and I was scared shitless. And he was actually super cool about it all. He said those words that I got my shit off, but I fucked up all his. But like I said, he was super cool. And then I got another chance to work with him a few months later in Bellingham, and it went great. And the Dave Teixeira, Dave Republic, who owned the company at the time, really put the match over. And it was one of those ones that my confidence was through the roof after that, just because it really went as well as it could have. And so Luther, the cool thing is he left ECCW not too long after I started. But I've had the pleasure and the privilege of booking him on ECCW shows in the last couple of years.
Nice.
Yeah, and it feels good, to be in that position and to get to. Luther did a lot for me in those first few years, and it's nice to bring him back. And we've had a lot of fun having him back, and a lot of really cool matches, and it's just been a privilege.
Yeah, he is definitely an intimidating dude for sure.
Yeah, still is.
The House of Pain started off as the wrestling school for ECCW, but kind of quickly it rolled into kind of like its own little company running its own shows. How did that come about?
Well, ECCW used to be WCCW, if I'm not mistaken. It was, I think, when WCCW ended, ECCW started.
Okay.
But we've always had the school, and there's been a couple of periods where we weren't training guys, but for the most part, in the last 22 years, we've had the promotion and the school, and I think we got to be the longest running Canadian promotion, or at least in the top 3. I would think I should look that up.
Because I know out here there wouldn't be anything.
Yeah, it's cool that we've been able to maintain that, and I think that the talent that we've had come through usually has pretty great things to say about us when they leave, and I take a lot of pride in that. It's important to me that we're putting on the best wrestling shows possible, and that people really enjoy their time here.
You had mentioned Michelle Starr, and I know that he was a trainer with House of Pain, and then he kind of separated and he started his own company. What was your relationship like with Michelle? I know you worked him a lot, and kind of what's your relationship like with him now?
Star and I, there's been ups and downs. I appreciate all the opportunities he gave me early on. He always, I got to work with a lot of talent, and he was very generous with the opportunities, and I'll always appreciate that. I enjoyed working with him as well in the ring. He's always, he's great in the ring, and we had some really great matches. Nowadays he's running All Star Wrestling, which is in the same area, and the cool thing is I think the wrestling business is so healthy right now that we can be running shows in the same areas and still be drawing, and we prove that time after time. We have there's ECCW out here, All Star Wrestling, there's VIPW on Vancouver Island. They're doing great things. They're selling out their buildings time after time over there. Very healthy business on the island. And then Big West and Thrash up in the Okanagan, and then Invasion even in the Okanagan a couple times a year. And I think if 20 years ago you told a promoter that that's the way things were going to be, I don't think anybody would have predicted the success about how indie shows are really consistently drawing well, and wrestling fans, there's enough wrestling fans to go around, and some go see all of them, and some stick to their favorites. But so Star and I are running in the same area, and thankfully we're getting along. There was times where we would fight over a city or a building, and we've both done things to frustrate the other. But when it comes down to it, if I see him, I shake his hand and show him the respect he deserves.
I want to talk about your first time, the feeling that you had the first time you won the ECCW title. That was in May of 2002, and you defeated Black Dragon, who is a veteran of the Japanese circuit, Brett Como. Wanted to talk about that match and what it felt like to be given the opportunity to run with the ECCW title.
Yeah, Como's the man. The Black Dragon is another one of those guys where I'd say definitely among the best I've ever been in the ring with. It was cool for me to go over him for the ECCW title, because when I did start with Can-Am and I was at those Can-Am shows, the guy that stood out to me most on those shows was the Black Dragon. He was the guy that I was the most impressed with and like impacted me the most. And then he ends up being the guy that puts me over for my first ECCW title. And we always have great matches. We've been working even up until the last. Got to work I think 2 years ago at the 20th anniversary for ECCW. So, but it's just been a pleasure, and he's a big influence on me. I got to be on the road with him when we would go. We were wrestling for Portland Wrestling together for several years. It's been super cool, and it means a lot that I've gotten to learn from him as much as I have, and the experiences I've had with him. Just a legend in the Pacific Northwest for sure.
Oh, without a doubt. And speaking of him, and you had mentioned Chance, there was the Pacific Cup in 2003. The first night was the first round, and you worked Chance. And then the second night, you worked 3 matches. You worked against Brett. You worked against another legend of the Pacific Northwest, Tony Kazina. And then in the finals, you defeat Brian Danielson, a.k.a. Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's like a who's who of awesome right there.
Exactly. You got that right. And that's exactly what I'm talking about when I say that I got given the best to work with right away. That's ECCW. They were bringing in the best. They had the best, or they were bringing in the best. And I kept getting to face these guys and learn from these guys and have these great matches. And I'll tell you, for those first couple of years, it was them. I'm fortunate that I'm talented enough to follow. But it was those guys. They were carrying me through those first couple of years. They're all those guys that I got to work with. Are a big reason why I had so much success early on, and that I'm at where I am. Like you said, Kazina, another guy, just one of the best I've ever been in the ring with. Daniel Bryan was incredible. He that was a really, really cool match. That was there's one point where I roll out of the ring to kind of collect myself, and it looks like I'm working like any other time, but I was legitimately collecting myself at that point. And but yeah, he was really cool enough to give me as great a match as he did, and put me over like that. And I was 4 for 4 on that tournament, man. It was like, as if I got to pick them myself.
Yeah, like I was looking at that and I was just like, that's an incredible, like, a fan getting to sit and watch just those 4 matches would be unbelievable.
Yeah,
it was
2 nights. They did that over 2 nights, and just really will always be one of my proudest accomplishments, and just that I was able to deliver. It's one thing to be given the opportunity, but you got to take that opportunity and run with it, right?
Exactly. The next one I want to chat about, like I said, I'm from New Brunswick, Canada. Grew up in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and there was a guy that lived down the street from me. We hung out. He was a little bit older than me, but we used to go to all the wrestling events, and all he ever said was he wanted to be a wrestler. So I moved out to Calgary, and lo and behold, who's Scotty Mac? working, and then later on, Scotty Mac beats him for the championship, but ladies' choice.
Oh shit! Wow, he's that. Speaking of legends, that he's a legend in and out of the ring. Another guy that like it. Not only I've been so fortunate, not only with the talent that I've gotten to work with ever since day one, but the guys I've gotten to hang with. Like I'm talking about those Portland trips with the Black Dragon. Well, you know who else was in the car was the ladies' choice.
Nice.
And the fourth man was Dropkick Murphy, and it was
wow.
So that's a whole lot of wrestling talent, storytelling talent, and commit talent in one car. And some of my favorite memories my whole life, and the cool thing is that's not done. There's plenty of memories to keep making with the ladies' choice. We're still very, very close friends. He was a big influence on me in and out of the ring. It's sometimes the things that I've done and the people that I know, it's surreal. My wife and I have a painting hanging on our wall in our room, a portrait of us painted by the ladies' choice for our wedding present. Yeah, so it's you look at that and I just it's impossible not to feel very thankful and grateful, and he's really the coolest dude you could ever know. I guess if you knew him, then you know he's the coolest dude you know.
Oh, without a doubt, he was the exact same the whole way growing up. It was just, when I saw that he actually was living his dream and working as a wrestler, I was like, man, I knew it. I knew that if anybody was going to do it, it was going to be him. That's wicked.
Well, I've got to learn from him in and out of the ring.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, before there was a Scotty Mac, there was a ladies' choice. And just very fortunate to have got to spend as much time with him as I have.
That's awesome. I noticed that you had worked a tag team with Jack Evans called Team Mat Rats. And were you a part of Mat Rats?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't. I was only there for a short time for the to shoot the pilot at the Palace. It was myself and Dave the Rave Swift against Apocalypse, who's now Rick Victor in WWE, and another guy called Edward G. O'Ryan. That's it. And but yeah, also on that show was Teddy Hart and Harry Smith, Rene Dupree, Eric Bischoff and Jason Hervey. We had Bob Ryder and Cyrus. I'm trying to.
There was some talent. There was some definite talent in Mat Rats.
Well, it was ahead of its time, really. At least in North America, where I think they've tried to do it a few times. They tried to do it again when they did the MTV. What was that MTV one they did?
XWA.
I think so. Yeah. So just really, spot Wrestling Factor X. There we go. Christina Von Eerie.
Oh, there we go. Nice.
Were you on that?
No, my friend had a
Oh, okay.
Sweet.
So, but Mat Rats, just super spotty, high flying, and that was one of those times where it was like I'd barely been in wrestling a year or two when I got that opportunity, and I thought, holy shit, I'm going to be on TV, because they were trying to do like a Saturday morning thing for like wrestling aimed at kids. So they wanted the wrestlers to either be teenagers or look like teenagers. And I think I was like 22, and they said I was like 19 or something on the thing, because all the wrestlers are supposed to be teenagers. And then I met Jack there, and then when we brought Jack in, they teamed us up, it was cool. I would have liked to have wrestled more in that tournament. I think Jack and I got beat in the first round.
Yeah.
He's a cool guy. I really enjoyed hanging out with him, and we were at Mat Rats. He's a cool dude.
And also in 2004, you went over to Ireland. How did that come about, and what was your experience like over there?
Yeah, I worked for Irish Whip. It was, I'll tell you, sitting on that plane. My best friend is Irish. Like my longest, we've been friends since I was 5, and so your best friend has an influence on you, and I don't really have a background. I'm a bit of a mutt. There's a big mix. But he had this Irish background, so I ended up, knowing more about it than I would have otherwise. So getting to go to Ireland, and I was a big U2 fan as well. I'm not as into U2 anymore because they kind of feels like people see U2 like they see Nickelback, and I have trouble doing that. But at the time, I was super stoked to go to Ireland and where my favorite band was from, and sitting on that plane, it was surreal. It was like one of those moments where it was like, this wrestling thing's really working out.
Sweet. One of the ones that I had to ask you about, I think it was because you teamed with Ladies' Choice, but it was Supergirls Volume 2. And it was cheerleader Melissa and Tiffany, and I saw it versus Scotty Mac and Ladies' Choice. Like, what's going on there? So I wanted to hear that story for sure.
Well, man, it just keeps coming back to the cool opportunities that I got, because it was a weekend of tapings. It was another one of those things where Dave Republic, he saw the potential in women's wrestling and the appeal of women's wrestling. And so I think he probably he was inspired by Shimmer, I imagine, on this, where he wanted Supergirls to be like another Shimmer,
nice.
and run it regularly. And it didn't quite, it didn't turn out as well as he wanted business wise, enough to keep moving forward with it. But the Ladies' Choice and I were fortunate enough to be, like, I think the only 2 guys booked on that weekend. And we gave it to him good. I think the heat on Melissa was a pretty solid heat, and it was a good time. They're cool enough to work with us, and the Ladies' Choice and I were always having a really good time, and that was a fun match to have and a fun weekend to be a part of.
I can just picture Ladies' Choice in that match. So
well,
totally.
Are you picturing him with his pants down? Because you better believe we had the sunset flip and bare ass spot in that one. It might even have been a double. I think maybe both of us got to do it. I don't remember.
That's perfect. There's been so many guys that have come through, like you said, ECCW, but 3 guys that kind of stand out for me because I know that they got their start in ECCW, and I have a feeling that you probably had a hand in training them, would be Gervin Harv and then also Kyle O'Reilly.
Yes.
Did you have a hand in helping those guys get their start?
Yeah, it was their class.
Their
class, I think, was the first one where I was really considered to be one of the trainers at ECCW, and a very, very successful class at that, because it was Kyle and the Bollywood boys, or the Singh brothers, as we'll call them.
Yep.
But also in that class was Nicole Matthews, who's very, very successful time in wrestling.
Yes.
And then we got El Phantasmo in that class as well, who's experiencing great success in the UK right now. He got to work with Will Ospreay. What's his name? Dunn. Pete Dunn. Is it Pete? Yeah, it was Pete Dunn he got to work with recently. And so he's the best of the best over there. And again, from that same class. And then Billy Swade is another guy that was in that class that he went with Storm, but he started at the same time and trained with us as well, and he's experienced great success over there in the Philippines, where he's teaching wrestling over there, and he's just come back to us. So a lot of wrestlers making waves from that class, and we're very, very proud. I experience a lot of pride when I see the Singhs and Kyle on WWE, and I was speaking to Kyle's cousin last night, who was asking about WrestleMania, and I said, "Oh yeah, I think he's going to be there. I don't, he'll be wrestling the night before," and then we asked about the next year. So I said, next year WrestleMania, he'll be on the actual WrestleMania. So it's cool having guys that I had a hand in training, experiencing the success they are, and I had a really cool moment with Kyle the last time we had him here, just reflecting on things, and feeling the gratitude from him meant the world to me. And I was just speaking with the Singh brothers a couple of weeks ago, and Gerv, he's still based here in Vancouver. Yeah, so Harv is staying in Florida, but Gerv's here in Vancouver. So we're going to get together in the next couple of weeks, and so I'm excited to catch up with him and just really congratulate him in person on everything that he's done. The guys that have made it and have accomplished things are the guys that took risks and made sacrifices, and their hard work is paying off, and it couldn't be happening to nicer guys. They're really all, Kyle and the Singhs are just three of the best dudes I know.
Nice. And speaking of the Singh brothers, it led into my next question. In 2007, you started working for Stampede. Jay Jacoby was with you, but I noticed that in one of them you had tagged with Gama Singh Jr., and then Tiger Raj Singh, and obviously, connecting him to the Singhs, Jinder Mahal.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could talk about making your way over to Stampede and who was running it at that point.
I think that was PWA.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was PWA because I won the title. They put me over for the belt, and then they brought me back. It was a surprise. Like, I just thought I was going in there and put their guy over because I was ECCW champ at the time, and actually I was ECCW champ and Canadian champ, and then they chalked everybody and put me over for theirs. But very cool to work with everybody there. In my time in wrestling, there's been much more cool guys and people I'm happy to know that I've encountered than otherwise, and Alberta is no exception. Really bunch of great wrestlers in Alberta. The last time I was there, I was working for RCW. Indies are stepping up, man. I think there's a lot of quality all across North America and beyond, and it's a cool time to be a part of the wrestling business.
Oh, without a doubt. All right, there's two questions that I've just been dying to ask, and this is the first one. You got to know about it. Kayfabe, fake real movie about a fake real movie. Who came out? I know that I'm assuming that it had a lot of bases within ECCW, because of course there's yourself, there's the Rocket Randy Tyler was there, Mike Roselli, and of course my boy Ladies Choice. How did that whole movie come about, and what was your experience like working there? Because I watch it frequently.
Oh, I love to hear that, man. That's actually the coolest part is it's one thing. It's great, the money when a movie is a big time commercial success, and that's all well and good. But when the movie that you make is over with the people in the wrestling business, the people that's their life, and that it can resonate with as many people in the business as it did, the cool thing is it played a part in my marriage. Really? Yeah, because that movie got around. Like I don't know if it was people were lending tapes to each other or what it was, but a lot of people in the business saw it, and one of those people was Christina Von Eeerie, and according to her, that was her favorite movie. And really? So when nice. so fast forward several years later, and I've been in Paraguay for almost 4 months, and we're bringing in our new female wrestler, Christina Von Eeerie, who I was very familiar with. I'd seen her work several times over the years, and her name would come up all the time. But we bring her out, and I think immediately upon meeting each other, the movie Kayfabe came up, and she told me how much she loved it, and I knew then and there that I was in there. I was no, Christina, the fact that she knew about me from Kayfabe beforehand, and that she gets to brag to her friends that she married a dude from her favorite movie. It's all,
yeah, exactly.
She does. She says she does it all the time. Like, I think, what was that post on your photo that time your friend said?
Shut up! You married Casa Supernova.
Yeah,
that's sweet.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that means a lot, and it's cool because we have the same sense of humor, and she had an appreciation for me well before we ever met, and it's not to mention she gets to meet her other favorite stars of that movie, because the Lady's Choice and Dropkick Murphy, and they're all my closest friends. So it's been cool for her to, all of a sudden she's meeting all the stars of her favorite movie. It's like Disneyland. But yeah, that came about when the Rocket Randy Tyler sat down with Mike Raven and Mike Scully, two very talented friends of his, and they wrote a wrestling movie, and I was over enough with them that they wanted me to audition for it, and they saw me as the cast of Supernova Bowl. And at that time, the British Office, still to this day, that's, as far as I'm concerned, the greatest television ever made. And and so I was already a huge fan of mockumentaries, and the idea of getting to be a part of one was obviously super appealing to me. And my only complaint is that we couldn't do more, because we were shooting it for, I think we shot it in under 3 weeks, if I remember, most of it anyways.
Wow.
I think. And so by the time we got to the end of it, I was really getting the hang of it, and I was loving the character. I was loving being cast as Supernova, because I knew it was good. I knew it was funny, and I knew it was going to be over. But yeah, my only complaint is that it didn't turn into a TV show or something, because it was easily one of the best experiences of my life.
I absolutely loved it. And of course, with Lady's Choice playing the two different roles, and that being part of the business, as soon as him and Randy started going, and like they would have the freeze frame and then explain the different terms, I bought in. I was like, yeah, I gotta watch this. And then when Lady's Choice does the gun show, I lose it every single time.
Yo, for sure, man, for sure. It's like I said, it's getting over with the people in the business, and because like I've gone to be involved in several movies and television shows over the years involving wrestling, and my first big movie I did was a movie for CMT called To the Mat, and I was Ricky Schroeder's stunt double.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm doing.
Wow.
Yeah. I've done all right with that, and but this one in particular, you can tell that it was written by someone that, he's watched some wrestling on TV, but really doesn't know much about professional wrestling. And so I'm trying to put together these, like I had quite a bit of influence on how the wrestling scenes were put together. And I'm trying to stay true to wrestling, but then stay true to the script. It's not like I have the ability to change the script of this thing, but it's like there's things that took place where that wrestling fans that are sitting at home watching it are going, well, that's not what it's like in wrestling, And so that's why it's so important with Kayfabe that it's, that it resonates with the people in the business, and that we're doing it justice. I feel the movie The Wrestler did that as well. That's
Yes.
easily one of my favorite movies, and they really did a great job with showing what that's like, for a wrestler like Randy the Ram.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you brought that up because we had talked about Mallrats or Mallrats, Mallrats also a good movie. But
Mallrats I've watched probably. It's in my top 3 movies that I've watched more than any other.
I love that movie.
Yeah, it was. I had Did you ever have a black box that descrambled a descrambler?
No.
Well, I did, and so you'd have that on your TV, and you'd get to watch the pay-per-views for. Right now, I'm admitting to stealing pay-per-views right now. But we would watch WWE and WCW pay-per-views on it. But it would also descramble the movie channels, and Mallrats was one of those. So every time it was on, that movie's got crazy replay value. I love it.
Oh yeah, great movie.
Showgirls, actually, Showgirls was also on about that time, and I knew what times I think I was 18 years old, 17 years old. I knew what times the nudity scenes were. So I'd flip to the channel when it was the nudity, because if you know anything about me, you know that I'm ridiculously in love with Saved by the Bell. So so Jesse Spano from Saved by the Bell was on Showgirls, and that was it was exciting for a teenage Scotty Mac.
Heck yeah. When you were talking about The Wrestler, I worked a tour last summer with Rene Dupree, who you had mentioned, and we're sitting around. We were just talking, and the topic of The Wrestler came up, and he was like, "Man, last week I lived the experience. I was literally sitting at a fan fest next to a guy that had a piss bag."
Oh,
I was
shit.
like, "Wow."
Shit.
Wow. He's like, I just looked around and I'm like, what is going on?
Well, it's funny, man. I have a joke between the Cremator and Moondog Manson and myself about when you're at I never really obviously the goal of professional wrestling for most of us is to be able to support ourselves with wrestling. And unfortunately, most of the time, if you're a wrestler on the indies, thankfully not as much anymore. There's plenty of guys making a good living at it. But for the most part, if you're an indie guy, you have a day job. And so Moondog and Cremator and I we every once in a while make a joke to ourselves about having a thumb in the meat slicer moment. When Randy the Ram is working in the deli and he's not happy about being working in the deli, and he gets recognized and he jams his thumb and fucks up his thumb just so he can get out of there and not deal with this fan recognizing him and where he's at. And so every once in a while we'll make a remark to the other how we had one of those thumb in the meat slicer moments today or something.
Yes. The WWE show in 2008, I know that it was an episode of SmackDown that you were on, but I know that you were there for more than just that. Can you talk a little bit about how that experience at WWE came about, and maybe talk a little bit about just what went on while you were there?
I've had a couple sort of opportunities, I guess. The first was I went and did a weekend at OVW. And Rip Rogers was there and was so good to me because I had a really great relationship with Buddy Wayne, who's a legend of the Pacific Northwest, and was my favorite when I would watch local wrestling on television growing up. He was my hero, and I was fortunate enough to get to learn from him and to wrestle with him and have a friendship with him. And so he put me over huge to the guys at OVW, and then unfortunately it just whatever happened, I wasn't performing on the level I should have at that time. I went and it was like it was everything I ever wanted, but I didn't perform like I'm capable of, and I just nothing really came from it except for getting to learn from Rip Rogers was terrific. But yeah, very, very disappointing. And then my next opportunity was when they get to do the SmackDown, and I was there for the pay-per-view and the Raw. And unfortunately, we didn't get a lot of ring time in front of anybody in the 3 days. The other local guys and I that were there, just circumstances. Like oftentimes they want to see the local guys if they get a chance, and they get in there and show them what they could do or whatever in front of the agents and all that. And the only time we got the ring was when they were choosing who they were going to have go against Khali on SmackDown.
Right.
So nothing really came from that. And I look back and I know where I went wrong as far as limiting my success is I ended up I had a lot of really cool opportunities, but what I should have done was make more of my own and just relocated to Florida or relocated to Louisville, after that first training camp. And I didn't do that, and I stayed here. And when it comes down to it, I have the most amazing wife. She's truly my dream girl that really I couldn't ask for anything more. And then I'm really enjoying my success with ECCW and the things we're doing here. So I don't look back on anything as a regret, because I really wouldn't want my life any different than it is right now. But at the same time, I'm aware of the choices that I made that determined where I ended up. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm not going to be someone that's sitting here saying that I was owed anything or I deserved anything that I didn't achieve. For the most part, there's obviously exceptions, but for the most part, everybody gets what they deserve. If whatever level of success you attain is likely the level of success that you deserve. And I'm never going to make excuses. But the pride that I feel in selling out time after time, one of the most legendary venues in Vancouver, in the Commodore Ballroom, and just consistently putting on amazing wrestling shows that I'm proud of from start to finish, that I know that are giving our fans much more than their money's worth. And then of course my relationship with Christina, who is just really my perfect match. Like I said, you can't have, when you got it that good, you can't have regrets, but at the same time, everyone should be honest with themselves as to the choices they've made, and you make your bed and you line it.
Right, exactly. I wasn't able to find a copy of it, but I know that I've seen it before, and that's This Wrestling Life, the documentary.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how that came about and your experience with doing that, because it's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember it being quite impactful.
Yeah, again, man, I've been given much more than anybody's share of opportunities, and some of it's right place, the right time, and some of it's my own hard work, and some of it's the personal connections I've made. But I've gotten cool opportunity after cool opportunity, including a very important year in my life being documented, which would have been around 2008. So when we got approached about that, a guy called Stephen Gillis, very, very talented filmmaker, really, really great human being. Stephen Gillis talked to us about wanting to do a So Stephen sat down with us and said he wanted to do this documentary. He's going to focus on myself, a wrestler called Casey Spinelli, Travis Sparks, and Bill Taylor, a referee. And the cool thing is at that time, it was in that year where I got that opportunity with WWE when I went and did SmackDown. Unfortunately, Stephen Gillis was really limited as to how much WWE even reference could have in the movie. So that part of the story he didn't get to tell as much. But that was also the first year that I was really running things with ECCW, where I really had the reins, and so all that happening at that time, and they're following me around with the camera, and getting to see such an important, look back on such an important year of my life, really the coolest thing, and it's something I'm really proud of. I know that I can say, watch this, and whether it's a wrestling fan or not, they can enjoy it. It doesn't, you don't have to be a wrestling fan to enjoy it, because the people in it that draw you in, and you want to see what happens and what ends up with these people.
Right. No, I remembered it. I was trying to find a copy, couldn't find anything, but I definitely wanted to talk about it. 2010, I think, is when it came out, and also in 2010 is when you became one of the primary owners. I know there's three of you. So what led to you becoming the owner, and Dave Republic selling it to you?
That was at the time I was at the time I was dating Tennille Dashwood, and she was trying to get into the WWE, and she wanted to relocate to Florida. So at that time I was kind of between, do I go to Florida, or do I stay at home here and buy ECCW, which Dave Republic was selling because he wanted out of the wrestling business. Dave is a politician.
Yes.
And he was, I guess, getting tired of having the local Vince McMahon quote attached to his name. He wanted to distance himself from wrestling, so he was selling it whether I was buying it or not. But he knew how much I love ECCW, and that I would ensure that it continued to be successful. He didn't want to just sell it to anybody, and so he initially wanted to sell it to Disco Fury and I, but Disco and I we were never really on the best terms, and Disco didn't like the idea of being in a partnership with me. So Disco ended up leaving and going and starting All-Star Wrestling with Michelle Starr, which we're on good terms now, and I'm all for their success. They had a great, really successful midget show last weekend, drew very well, so they're doing great. But at that time we parted ways, and I ended up buying it with a wrestler's mom, a wrestler called Jamie Diaz. His mom, Mary, wanted to be involved. She was a friend of Dave's, and then a close friend of mine, and a wrestling mind I have great respect for, my partner Jeff, who's known as the Natural on shows.
Yes.
And so the three of us bought it basically because if we didn't buy it, it would have ended up in the wrong hands. And so I had to figure out, do I go to Florida and go after WWE and then potentially not have my home promotion to come home to, and I ended up staying here, and very, like I said, very happy with my decisions, because ECCW went from something that I was just trying to keep alive to the greatest success it's ever had, because it's just, ever since we bought it, it's we do better and better, and I never knew we would be consistently selling out the Commodore Ballroom. I didn't know that was in our future, and then this weekend coming up is our first time at the Hard Rock, and
wow.
Yeah, and so if that's a success, I think we'd like to perhaps run that a couple times a year. But it's going from the more shows, obviously, with in bigger venues, the better, and the quality of wrestling is there. ECCW shows are of very high quality from start to finish. There's something for everyone, all different kinds of wrestling fans. There's, we got all different wrestlers, and it's nice to be able to be able to confidently say you have something for everyone at your shows.
Without a doubt. Now I wanted to talk about, we kind of talked a little bit about it, but I want to talk about Christina just because she's amazing.
I love talking about her too.
But so you kind of talked about, you met her on your tour in Paraguay, which, as a wrestling person, you don't hear a lot about the wrestling down in Paraguay, but I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason. And obviously the two of you were meant to be down there, and I'm sure everybody who's listening knows who Christina is. So, but we'll still gush over her a little bit. So can you talk about, obviously you meet down there. How did the relationship continue from there, leading into, obviously you guys are classified as newlyweds because it's been within the last year.
Yep.
And not only do you get to, share the wrestling business and your love for the wrestling business with your wife, but you guys are actually a tag team, and you held the tag team belts for a while, defeating somebody who we talked about earlier. Dr. Luther was in that tag team when you guys won the belt. So I was wondering if you could just talk about that. I wanted to go over her for a bit.
Yeah, well, it was Dr. Luther and Ravenous Randy, another very, very talented wrestler that I've had the privilege of working with for a long time now. I've said publicly several times, I proclaim that Christina and I are the first and only ever tag team to get married.
Yes.
So tag team champions to get married, and no one has given me any reason to think otherwise. So I will keep that going. If anyone, please tweet at Mac Wrestling. Let me know if there's some sort of married tag team champions that I don't know about, because I want to keep saying it's only us. But yeah, Christina and I, right when I met her, they picked her up from the airport, brought her back to the studio in Paraguay, and you're right. There wasn't a lot of wrestling in Paraguay, and which is why my partner Joel, really good guy, wanted to start a wrestling company in Paraguay. He saw what I had done with ECCW here in Vancouver, and we'd become friends. And then so he wanted to do that in Paraguay. He was there for a different business venture, and it was the best decision of my life. I mean that 100%. And the best 5 months of my life, containing the best 5 weeks of life. And and when I met Christina, I knew right away, like within moments, that like I remember as walking away from the meeting thinking that this person's going to play a big role in my life.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it was amazing in Paraguay, and when we came back, she was in San Francisco and I was Vancouver, and we were concerned about the distance, and I wasn't used to what I wanted most being the best thing for me, and so we thought it couldn't be done, and it was it's almost a year after that where I messaged her, and it hasn't ended since. Like we've when we reconnected, it was back on full force, and I knew that she was the person I was going to spend the rest of my life with, and so both of us everything became about each other from that point on, and it's cool because I had quite the reputation from my years in the wrestling business, and I tried to live that Scotty Mac character, every moment almost, and so it takes quite the girl to turn that around, and basically I've been rebranded from Scotty Mac to Smeary. It's a package deal now with the two of us, and any amount of time spent with us, people realize that it's a perfect match, and I really couldn't be more fortunate. It's not. She's crazy talented, and I admire the hell out of her, and getting to perform together is incredible, and yeah, it's the coolest.
That's awesome. Before we wrap up, just a couple little questions. Do you have a preference between working singles versus working tag wrestling?
I love both. You know what? I really love both. Uh, like teaming with my favorite is teaming with Christina or teaming with Dropkick. Um, we
Right.
just both of us, both Dropkick and I and Christina and I have such a strong connection, and um, we're really just we're pretty damn fun to be around when you're around in
Yep.
combination of that, and that really comes out in the ring because just in the way that we interact, I know it's very entertaining. So that part, I can't do on my own. So as much as I love singles wrestling, I do, and my you know I have a lot of my greatest matches ever are singles matches and coolest memories. But at the same time, um, I'm always having a good time out there in tag team wrestling. I like um, uh, I think I like both equally, and I'm probably always going to do both. Maybe as I get older, I'll be in a tag team a little bit more and cut the amount of bumps in half.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do love both. There's really great memories from both.
What about working babyface versus working heel?
That's a good one because the way that I say that is that I love both, but working heel is my number one favorite thing to do, besides Christina, and my being a baby face is my number 5 favorite thing to do. So
Okay.
so basically, it's like in ECCW, I probably will be a heel for the rest of my time in the ring, because if you have the choice between your first favorite thing to do and your 5th favorite thing to do, you're
Exactly.
gonna pick your first. But then at the same time, if I'm working somewhere else and they want me to be a baby face, it's a fun change for me, and I can do that and then come back and be a heel here. I'm a pretty good baby face, but I'm a great heel.
I can hear like some of Ladies' Choice in you, and every time I've ever seen Ladies' Choice wrestle, I'm like, he's a beauty heel, and that's the same thing with Scotty Mac.
Yeah, the Lady's Choice has been a big influence on me, and he's that's a guy. That's a lot of fun to be in the ring with. That guy, he's incredible.
And what for you as a worker and obviously an owner promoter? What for you makes for a good referee?
I think they say a great referee is when all's said and done, you don't remember who the referee was.
Yep.
So yeah, it's being there for where you need to be there, and not there every other every other time. Like
Yep.
um, it's nice too when a referee has a lot of experience and they can help with the communication in the ring. Um, I don't want them to overdo it. I certainly don't want most referee calling spots for me or anything, um,
Right.
but it's nice when they can update you on something you don't know about, or something in the middle of the match, or if you have to communicate something to someone else, maybe in a tag match or something, you can tell the referee and they can efficiently get that message across, and then yeah, be in position for those counts. Count the 3, whether if the guy doesn't kick out, you got to count 3. Don't be hesitating after the 2 count, and that's really what it comes down to. We've got a lot of great referees out here, and referees can they can't necessarily make a match, but they sure can break one.
Yes.
And so it's rough when you got a couple guys in there working their ass off, and they get to the finish and the referee fucks up the finish. We've got a few stories of that, but yeah, but we got some great referees out here. My buddy Jeff Cummer's doing a great job, and then there's a referee called Girl Hebner we got from 321 Battle, and she's got a great future in the wrestling business, and she's doing everything she can to attain it, and so that's another. Keep an eye out for Brit. Is it Brittany? I don't even know her real name. Girl Hebner. I just go by.
Girl Hebner. I love it. I love it.
But yeah, so she's doing great, and great having her in there.
Lastly, any merch that you have that fans can get a hold of, where do they go for that? Anybody trying to get a hold of you for bookings or whatever, how's that possible? And also, what's coming up in terms of dates that are coming up for Scotty Mac?
Big thing is 22nd anniversary ECCW on Saturday, this coming Saturday, March 31st, the Hard Rock in Coquitlam. Tickets are available at Ticketmaster. And then after that, April 14th, we're back in Kitsilano. We have a big TLC match in Abbotsford coming up. You can find out. It's going to be our biggest show ever, Ballroom Brawl 10 at the Commodore Ballroom on July 21, I believe. So I'm really, really stoked to tell everybody the guys that we got for that show. I mean, ECCW always delivers, especially at the Commodore. We have such great homegrown talent, so many talented wrestlers.
Yes.
But at the same time, when it comes to the Ballroom Brawl, we try to bring in a couple names for everyone, and guys that they wouldn't normally see. And I'm really excited to let everybody know who we got coming to Ballroom Brawl 10. Information on all our shows you can find it ECCW.com. Everybody go check that out right now. A couple of the guys that are involved in my match on Saturday have hacked the website, and they're having a good time. Yeah, they're having a good time making fun of Scotty Mac on there. So go check that out on ECCW.com and Twitter at ECCW. And then as far as myself, you can find me at Smack Wrestling on Twitter, Scotty Mac on Facebook, and Instagram at Smack Wrestling. We got some lots of smeary selfies where Christina and I love taking pictures of ourselves. So Instagram's a lot of fun, and you can find Christina through mine. You find me at Smack Wrestling, and then if you want to send Christina a message, you can find her right through there.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to sit down and have this chat. I've had an absolute blast. Been a huge fan of yours since basically when you broke into the business. So it's an honor to be able to have the opportunity to talk with you. And, huge fan of Christina, obviously. And so it's always cool to hear that story, too.
I just remembered, too, I didn't put over PWA on Vancouver Island as well. They work closely with VIPW, but there's PWA with Eddie Osborne over there. I want to make sure I get that in. And I would like to wrestle in Alberta again sometime this year. So if I do, you make sure that you come out and we'll shake hands, and it'd be nice to meet you in person.
That'd be hard for me to do. I live in New Brunswick.
Oh, you're now in New Brunswick? Okay.
Yeah, brother. Yeah, I was in Calgary just at the start. Yeah, no, I'm out in New Brunswick, but
well, if I end up in the Maritimes, then I guess.
Definitely. We've got some pretty big companies going on out here, and one of the companies, one of the guys in kind of the head of it or in charge of it, he just worked a couple of Impact matches. He's probably worked with Christina before. Marcus Burke. I don't know if she would know him or not, but that
sounds familiar. She says.
There you go. There you go.
My Uncle Rob and Auntie Peggy were two grown-ups that were very supportive of a young Scotty Mac wanting to be a wrestler. They live in Nova Scotia. So,
nice.
Yeah, it'd be cool to wrestle out there and get to wrestle in front of them, and they get to meet Christina. So, you never know. It might be something I'm seeking out.
That'd be sweet. Right on. Well, again, thank you so much. Once fans, that was with Scotty Mac.